How has the direct experience of working with victims been for you? What are the various kinds of victims you work with?
The experience of working with victims has been very varied, very enriching, and very powerful. That has forever changed the way we have looked at many things in psychology, in mental health, and the way we feel that uh, psychotherapy needs to be done with people. We have worked with different types of people undergoing trauma. It has been child rape, it has been homicide, it has been kidnapping, it has been all kinds of situations requiring negotiation, sometimes dealing with hostages, sometimes dealing with very bizarre situations where the police have asked us for our help. And many of them have required us to be psychologists on the spot, understanding the gravity and the complexity of the situation, and aiding the police in zeroing down on what needs to be done to diffuse the crisis as fast as possible. It has required us to work as a team with the police, with the community, and understanding the culture, the rootedness of the people involved who are undergoing a crisis, and arriving at decisions at the shortest possible period of time to sometimes prevent loss of life, to sometimes prevent further damage, to take preventive action against perpetrators. So it has been a very varied experience for me and for my whole team.
Why is such work required? What difference does it make to the victims?
Okay. This work is required for various reasons. One is that there are all these situations are situations involving understanding human behavior, and understanding human behavior under extreme circumstances, under painful circumstances, where human beings are facing overwhelmingly difficult events, and they have to come out of that and narrate their experiences in order to help the law enforcement and the judiciary. That is where mental health comes to the help, the support of the victim, so that he or she can translate their inner experiences into a language, into a communication that can be understood by others. And that is where our team, our organization works as an intermediary, as a go-in between the survivor and the law enforcement and the judiciary. And this is the role we have been fulfilling for the last 10 years.
Sanchetan has been associated with trauma victims for the last 8 years. Could you tell us a bit about the initial challenges you faced and how it has shaped the growth and progress of the organization?
I think the initial challenges have been too varied and too many, and one could write possibly several encyclopedias on that if we were to start it. But I think the biggest initial challenge that we had to face was to convince the law enforcement that our work is valuable, and it can lead to what is regarded as the most important thing in law enforcement, is to solve a case. And in a large number of situations, it has helped the law enforcement to zero down on the offender, to understand the narrative and the testimony of the victim and make sense out of it, and arrive at a conclusion. And I'm glad to say that in the last 10 years, this has happened for a large number of cases which have been as varied as homicide, kidnapping, or sexual assault, or many even bizarre cases where the complexity and the opaqueness of the whole situation made it difficult for the law enforcement to understand what was happening.
What is the status of mental health services in our country? What are the projects being undertaken by our organization, and how do you think this will affect the current situation?
Well, I think the status of mental health in our country is too big and varied, and but what is most important is that the mental health is extremely categorized. mental health is not moving out of the domains of the hospitals and clinics and be in service of the individual, of the community, of situations that take place around us. And Sanchetan is one organization that neither works in a clinic nor in a sterilized space of the hospital, but it works directly in the midst of a community, in the midst where an individual might need a mental health person to find a support and ally in what he or she is going through. That is where mental health needs to move on, and mental health needs to find its roots over there. Ours is a country where most people do not go to hospitals or clinics when they have an emotional problem. They withdraw, they stay back, and very often they feel that they do not have the courage or the confidence to move on in life, but at the same time when they need a mental health professional too. So therefore it's important that mental health professionals somewhere start working with the community, in the community, for the individual where he or she is undergoing suffering, and not expect that individual or community to come at his or her doorstep. Our organization is working on different projects. Initially, our organization was a service delivery organization and addressed the trauma and suffering that children, families, individuals went through and helping them deal with that. As we worked with them individually, many larger issues emerged, and we realized that we can no longer find answer to this by continuing to keep on working with people at an individual level. Therefore, it was a collective decision on the part of the board, our team, that these issues which have national importance, these have these are happening all over the country. How about working on them at a different level, at a macro level? So the idea of research, the idea of advocacy came to us, but we were very clear on one point, is that we don't want to be just researchers, we just don't want to be advocacy people, but we want to integrate that with our service so that at the same time we are doing all three. We can't do all three equally, but we can do so in a way that has the maximum impact on the criminal justice system, on the thinking of the people, and on the way our country is going to handle issues related to victims over the next 50 years. So we have different projects that came up apart from service delivery, and they were researching on sexual violence across India, researching on the trauma and how it is linked to development, which takes place in children after riots or other violent incidents taking place in our country, and also working with communities, also working with traumatized, marginalized groups as a whole, and to see that how such macro effects lead to overall change on a much larger scale than the individual level. And this is a research that is done by a team of psychologists, social workers together, keeping in mind the cultural rootedness of our country, the way our communities as a whole, as families as a whole, they work together. And the project takes into account not only the micro, but also the macro aspect of the psyche.
How does Sanchetan see rights of victims coming to the forefront, and what role does it wish to play in the future?
Sanchetan feels that the rights of the victims will only come to the forefront when victims, survivors, they form a body to fight for their rights, and they also become politically active. By politically, I do not mean aligning with a political party, but working in such a way so that they do not get excluded from the criminal justice system, so that they collectively speak about their power, they collectively speak about their suffering, act collectively, speak in one voice. That is the way only that the rights of the victims would come about in the future of our country. And that is the way Sanchetan believes that by getting the victims together, we can lead them towards that.